Mm.
Yes.
Well, yesterday, in fact, you could have decided not to have organized a press conference or not to respond to them at all, because the final decision rests with the ministry. But you saw the need to respond to that press conference. Why?
Well, you see, the thing about it is that it's important that as a country we support the president, we support the Minister of Land and Natural Resources to be able to grow the sector. As I hear we're talking, the Minister for Land and Natural Resources was in the state and at an investment forum telling investors that Ghana was the ideal place to be able to bring your investment. And so why would we allow, others to thwart the effort? And it's not, and I think the point has been made. Some of the questions that the IEA were asking were the genuine questions to ask. How do we as a country extract more out of our mineral resources? How do we as a country ensure that mining, provides that catalyst for our development? Of those are positive ones. But unfortunately, we believe that, after they ask the question, the solutions that they are prescribing were completely inimical, to the country.
Inimical.
Yeah.
Why?
Inimical because, you see, for mining, it is a very capital-intensive endeavor, and it takes a while for your investment to bear fruit. And so the issue of security of tenure is very important. It's the reason why you would see that in our Act 70C, Section 44C, it talks about the fact that if the person has met the material requirements of the lease, the minister shall renew the lease. Because what you want to do is that if somebody is going to bring like $1 billion, like Newmont did to establish the Ahafo North mine from scratch, you want to make sure that the person would have that security of tenure that when the initial lease comes to an end, you are going to renew it. So you know that if he has to invest money into the community, if he has to invest resources to find difficult to reach all, he would be able to do that. Not just come in and then because you've given him a 10-year or 15-year, then all he wants to do is how can I grab as much as quickly as I want and go. That's not the kind of investors you want. You want investors who would come and invest to transform your economy. And so for that to happen, security of tenure is very important. And the prescription that the IEA were given that, that we breach our own laws is completely inimical. And, some of these things, when it's done, it's picked by the international wires. You don't want investors to start taking decisions on things that are not even what the government position is, but just because, you have some CSOs pushing that particular angle.
What about their proposal that we need to own our resources and allow our people to be the ones to mine those resources? Is this not the best time to do something of sorts?
Well, again, it is important that our people own, our resources. It's important that our people mine our resources. I don't know whether you know Kibi Goldfields. Kibi Goldfields have been mining. They are Ghanaian-owned firm. They've been mining. If you know Adamus is a Ghanaian-owned mine. They've been mining. If you take Asante Gold is a Ghanaian mine. They've been mining. Azuma has taken a resource. They are going to start building the mine. They are mining. The whole of Ghana, there's a lot of mineralization in Ghana. It's big enough for our people. If our people want to mine, it's under the IEA building now. The only reason why we're not mining there is because nobody's invested exploration to be able to find what mineral is under the IEA building so that we could be able to mine that. So yes, we should be able to open that up. But for us to be able to open that up and get our Ghanaians to mine, it doesn't mean that we twist the hand of people who have come in based on our laws to come and do their investment and say that we are taking it away from them. And we should also benchmark with the best jurisdiction. I saw the former Speaker of Parliament giving us an example of Libya, giving us some Middle East, where they had negotiated their contract. But again, we need to look at those things and say, when it comes to minerals, are these the most mature jurisdictions that we can have? Can we go to an Australia, for example? Australia, they themselves, they are mining. They themselves, they have the technical competence, they have the resources. But in Australia, unlike, Ghana, there are mines, another Goldfields, an African mine. They have 4 different, operations in Australia that they own fully. Are there? They are not Australians. They own that fully. You go into other, even the UK. All these developed countries, they still attract foreign direct investment. So we should be able to get our own to grow and take the high of mining, but they should be able to coexist with the big boys also in the industry. So that can happen. It's not as if they are paradoxical. You can have both of them happening. Let's get our people to own. Let's get our people and others to also come. Because you see, the thing is that it's not about your people only owning you. You are building all these local champions. They are not going to be staying in Ghana. I saw in the IEA conversation, there was some talk about Dangote, that Dangote now has left Nigeria, is gone into Kenya. How are we going to get our own to also go into other countries when we are seen as if we take from other African countries who come into our territory? So we should not do things that then limit our own people when the opportunity comes for them to also go out. What do you call it? EFP, they've done some operations in Liberia before. If you add them, they are in other African countries trying to go. We should not allow some of the actions that we will take in the quest of wanting to solve a genuine thing then become inimical. I'm sure if you spoke to the likes of Dr. Sigmund Tiao, and he has, prescriptions about how we get our people involved in it. And one of them is not just the issue of ownership of the mine. If you look at the way the resources that come out of mining is shared, you will find out that what goes to the owner in terms of dividend is some proportion. What comes to government in the terms of royalties and taxes, also a small proportion. But the chunk of it is the input into mining, the cost of mining. Most of these inputs, how do we ensure that those inputs will be produced in this country? How do we ensure that we'll be able to produce a lot of the Zen? You know that Zen Petroleum that has recently listed. It's because Goldfields gave them an opportunity for a Ghanaian firm to start supplying fuel into the large-scale sector. That has then gotten them to now go to the point that they have listed. Do you know that in Newmont, they took a chainsaw operator and have converted him from being a local road contractor. Now it's a national road contractor. We need to do a lot more of this with our resource. So it's not just the issue of just the ownership of the mine itself, but the inputs that go into that. How do we ensure that our contracting firms, Rabodeck, EMP, and things also then become big and then are exported out of our jurisdiction and go into other places? These are the things we need to do. But beyond all of that, if we want to get mining to work for us, another major challenge that we have is the fact that, do you know that in the Takwa area, Ghana Manganese and then Anglo Gold Eduapin contributed 5.1 billion Ghana cedis in terms of taxes to GRA last year. The question you ask is that what percentage of that came back into the Takwa enclave in terms of development? Unfortunately, the way we started our fiscal regime, that will go into the consolidated fund. So how do we change, the same way we have the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, let's also have a Minerals Revenue Management Act so that these resources, as the chamber we've been pushing, 50% of our royalties should be able to go into into these areas so that you can use that to develop it. You also know that last year, the small scale sector produced 52% of our output. So when the large scale sector, $19 billion in terms of taxes, based on the 48% of gold exports that they did, the small scale sector that did 52%. Can you guess how much they paid in terms of taxes? Can you guess?
No.
19 billion cedis is what I said the small scale did with the 48%. They paid $0.5 million Ghana cedis. based on 52%. So again, this is another area in which we need to solve this asymmetry. How do we formalize our small scale sector and get them into the system so that they also can contribute? At least if they contributed about $10 billion and we added it to the 90, wouldn't we have had 29, 30 billion? Wouldn't we have used that to be able to develop these areas more? But we rather, allow a sector that is producing 52% rather to destroy our environment and do not then contribute to the exchequer and make, Atu suffer to be able to get the resources that he requires to do his big push.
But the destruction of environment, which is an issue we are trying to deal with aside, the argument has always been made, and that argument was made by the IEA too, that in the case of a small-scale miners, majority of, for example, the impact the foreign exchange from them has had on the cedi, on inflation, among others, majority of the value is retained right here in Ghana. In the case of the big mines, you're talking about the payment of taxes, but majority of the value is also retained outside. How do you respond to that argument?
Did IEA provide you any data to back that? Did IEA provide you any data? This is the Institute of Economic Affairs. Read their statement. Is there any data to back that? Over 70% of the value from large-scale mines which comes back into the country. Beyond the fact that, Bank of Ghana buys 20% of the gold in Ghana, beyond the fact that there's some mandatory repatriation that has to happen, beyond the fact that your fuel and then your energy cost is paid in dollars, the Bank of Ghana gives these people permission to collect their monies in dollars. The other suppliers, vendors that Bank of Ghana also gives them permission to collect their payment in dollars. So you need to bring the dollars in to be able to come and do that. There are some of the mining firms that pay their royalties in dollars, so that also comes back. When you have to pay your salary and pay your other taxes, you have to bring the dollar back into the market, into the system, convert them. The money goes into the commercial banks. The Bank of Ghana has given permission for the mines to be able to take their money into the commercial bank, convert them, onto, to be able to pay your CDs and all of that. So over 70% of that value comes. So in terms of the strengthening of the dollar, it's not only small scale that does that. Also the large scale. So the value retention. So there is about over 70% of that comes into the market. And do you know that also the way we have calibrated our mining and fiscal policy, government takes over 60% of the profit that comes out of the mining operation. So when IEA wants to discuss these things, they need to situate them with the data. They should provide us with the data. And this data, they are publicly available data. If you go to the Bank of Ghana, you go to the GRA, you get them. And then all of us can sit down and see what is the validity of the points that they are making. So when IEA talked about that, and they talk about the strengthening of the city, have they gone back to look at what the cost of the if you have to restore one hectare of land, how much that will cost? And so that when you do all of that, the damage that you're doing, what is that costing to us? Have they gone to look at the kidney of that person who is dead, the lady who has given birth to children who are deformed? Have they going to look at that? Are they going to look at the cost of what is happening to our cocoa? The fact that heavy metals are getting into that. The fact that the people in Takwa do not have water to drink. Have they going to compute the cost of that? How much is that costing us?
Are you suggesting by
water treatment plant did not have water to drink? Have they going to look at the cost of that?
Are you suggesting that the big mines do not in any way affect our environment? We don't suffer any pollution from them at all?
No. So what it is that the big mines are so regulated by the EPA and all of that if even in your operation something happens, you will have to remediate it. You would be fined so heavily if any of those things happen. So in terms of the last scale sector, your impact on the environment, what you do is that as you start mining, you do concurrent reclamation. And then when you finish, you post the bond. The bond is money that is sitting there. So that whatever damage you've done, you are able to restore it. Those bonds are sitting. So that those systems that have been put in place, to be able to police that. And that's what we should be pushing for. That's why we talk about formalization of the small sector. Once you formalize it, you get them into the point where they are paying their taxes and all of that. But the legal small-scale mines, some of them are also beginning to pull down. Some of them are also doing concurrent reclamation and all of that. That is positive. Those legal ones are some ones who are, doing a good job. And that's something that we should do. But majority of the ASM and the people who are doing the illegalities and all of that, they don't do that.
And let me conclude by asking you this question. What if the ministry listens to the IEA and that's what the IEA is saying? What's the risk?
So again, you see, the point about it is that the reason why the ministry will not listen is that the laws that govern our country, and that's why, so if you go to the Minerals and Mining Act 2006, Act 703, if you go into Section 44, it says in Section 44.3, it says that 44.1 says that the leaseholder may apply for an extension. Then when you go to 44.3, it says that when the leaseholder applies for an extension and has materially met all the terms of that particular lease, it says the minister shall. So if the minister should listen to them and do that, what they will be doing is that we'll be going against our law. What we will be doing is that we'll be sacrificing the security of tenure. You know what that impact is going to do? It's definitely that it's going to impact on the investing attractiveness of our country, of not only just foreign investors, even local investors. If they do it to one, then you, even a local, if you invest, when after you've invested all your money, when the lease has expired, they can also take it from you. So this thing we are talking about, it's not only about the foreigner, it's about even us as a Ghanaian. It's about making sure that the attractiveness of our country, so far as investment is concerned, for both the local investor as well as the foreign investor.
Engineer, thank you. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much.
Is Engineer Dr. Ken Ashigbey, CEO, Ghana Chamber of Mines, speaking to us.